Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Xbox One.
TV experience. TV and movies. TV. Xbox. Watch TV. TV.
Sports.
Television, TV,
TV. I'm thrilled to announce a live-action Halo television series.
I'm sure most of you have probably heard the news by now that Microsoft is potentially planning on releasing all their exclusives to other platforms. And in my opinion, it doesn't seem like any of this is off the table. There's been tons of discussion about this online, and it seems like Phil Spencer wants to clarify this in a conference held next week. And I know my title seems a little bit dramatic, but I've been watching Microsoft pretty closely over the years. And let me start this video by saying that I own an Xbox. Even though the sad truth of it is I don't really have any reason to use it because I have a PC. So any game on Game Pass can be played there. I'm not taking away from Game Pass in this video because there's no denying that it is the best deal in gaming. But that's only at this time. The question that I always come back to is whether Game Pass is actually sustainable in its current form. I'm subscribed and currently playing Palworld on there, even though I'll probably end up migrating over to Steam now that I know that I like it. Again, Game Pass is great to find games you'd normally be hesitant to buy right away, or not buy at all. I just worry about the future that we're headed towards. The leaks that we saw last year were very telling for the future of Xbox. Although all this information could be irrelevant by then, where there's smoke, there's fire. We know where their heads are, and I don't see the plan shifting too far off when we're talking about leaving the hardware market.
What can I do for you, Phil?
I want to make a lot of money, Activision deal, Game Pass.
So with the Activision deal under fire, you need more people to adopt the Game Pass?
Yeah, we want to make a lot of money and make money.
Oh, I think I can help you.
I love having choice, and I think it's very important. We're edging closer to an all-digital gaming era. We're arguably basically there now. But physical is still kind of an option, even though most games don't even fit on the disc anymore. Shout out to Nintendo, even though I hate you. All digital is the least of our issues if subscription services end up being the only way that we can play games. It sounds crazy and so far off, but I remember a time when it was considered a waste of money to download a game because you weren't able to trade it in to GameStop later if you hated it or you didn't collect games. I, for one, as a kid, relied on this method to get new games. Even the games that I loved, sometimes I had to trade in. It was either keep playing the same game or trade them up for something new or just get fewer games. Anyway, the point is, we never thought back then that buying our games digitally would be the only way to do it because, let's face it, physical doesn't really matter anymore anyway. Again, I'm not here to argue whether or not Game Pass is great or not. It's easily the best deal in gaming, in its current form. And you would be crazy to say otherwise at this time. I play on PC and it's $9.99 for a ton of games. I'm also not going to pretend like Microsoft is choosing quality over quantity here, but it's more like Netflix in its early years as of right now. Most of the games are still arguably subjective, but some are just outright bad.
Ooh. Redfall is $69. Oh shit, you can buy the $100 edition. Oh wow.
Either way, there is some great games to choose from on the platform, especially during the writing of this script. I've been playing Palworld like crazy on Game Pass. It made it really easy to just jump in and get into the hype of this game. And let's be honest, life is very expensive right now. It's been pretty darn convenient to just pay $10 and hop into a game. To be honest though, this is the longest I've consistently paid for the subscription though, because I tend to just play a few games and then cancel my subscription shortly after. And that's another point about Game Pass and its numbers and how they might be slightly inflated by Xbox themselves. There is a huge amount of people that get Game Pass through promo codes. These codes are a dime a dozen, and it seems like someone like Discord or Mini Gamer Focused Snacks have a 1-month trial somewhere. There was a time when I was able to have Game Pass for over 6 months on just promo codes alone, but now it seems like they're getting much stricter on the codes for people that have been previously subscribed. And to their defense, they absolutely should. I'm one of many people that I know personally that did this. So whatever the quote user base Game Pass is at now, it's certainly inflated by tons of people using these free trials, and that's for sure. So it begs the question, how much will Game Pass have to cost to sustain? If we're going off the Xbox leaks last year only, we can say with certainty that Game Pass isn't profiting in its current form. Maybe breaking even at best. This is all by design, of course. When you're launching a service like this, you want people to become dependent on it. Hook them for a few months at a loss and hope you make it up later with future subscription charges and purchases from your digital storefronts. If you ask me, Xbox leaving the hardware market has been written on the wall for a while. If a company is willing to put billions of dollars for third-party games on a service and not invest even a fraction of that money on your own first-party games, I think it's safe to say they are preparing for a future that doesn't compete with Sony's PlayStation directly. And then they turn around and put even more billions into acquisitions like Bethesda and Activision. Things seem really messy at Microsoft at the moment, if I'm being honest. It seems like they were headed down one path and then they drastically decided to make a sharp turn. It seemed like they were going to build a nice library of exclusives to potentially have the Xbox not get totally swept this year. The timing just seems odd for a lot of people, I think. But I guess going back to all this cost for Microsoft, it doesn't really make much sense for Microsoft to continue making hardware for how little the player base is right now. 30 million sounds like a lot on paper, but when you compare it to the 100 million each on Nintendo and PlayStation, it's hard to get those exclusive deals like they used to get back on the 360 days. I honestly thought that last generation would be the end of Xbox. Xbox still hasn't recovered from this presentation. Even Sony couldn't help but meme the hell out of this. Microsoft made it so easy. I knew a lot of people personally that had a 360 that went and jumped on the PS4 bandwagon just due to the cost and the ridiculous DRM that was in place.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360. That's your message. If you don't,
Well,
people don't like it.
if you have zero access to the internet, that is an offline device.
This was a time when a lot of people had terrible internet, or just none at all. For me, I didn't live in a highly populated city, so the internet was always kinda bad. Sony could have simply walked out on stage and said the price and called it a day, but they took it a step further by releasing commercials, taking direct jabs at Xbox and their ridiculous game sharing policy.
This is how you share your games on PS4. Thanks.
PlayStation.
But for this era to be online only and have to have your console connected to the internet at all times was just a huge red flag for a lot of people. And Xbox's former CEO was not helping anything. This was an absolute disaster, to say the least. But luckily, Don Matrick stepped down and Phil Spencer took his place. I don't really have anything bad to say about Phil Spencer, if I'm being honest. For a guy being in the position that he's in, he seems somewhat grounded. He is brutally honest sometimes and maybe too honest.
We're not in the business of out-consoling Sony or out-consoling Nintendo. There isn't really a great solution or win for us. And I know that will upset a ton of people, but it's just the truth of the matter is that when you're third place in the console marketplace and the top two players are as strong as they are and have, in certain cases, very discrete focus on doing deals and other things that will, that kind of make being Xbox hard for us as a team. That's on us, not on anybody else. Our vision is that everybody who's on console has to feel like they have a great experience and they're a first-class citizen. They've invested a ton in our platform. But we are not in a position, and I see it out there, I see commentary that if you just build great games, everything would turn around. It's just not true that if we go off and build great games, all of a sudden you're going to see console share shift in some dramatic way. We lost the worst generation to lose in the Xbox One generation, where everybody built their digital library of games. So when you go and you're building on Xbox, we want our Xbox community to feel awesome. But this idea that if we just focused more on great games on our console, that somehow we're going to win the console race, I think doesn't really lay into the reality of most people. Like 90% of the people every year who walk into a retailer to buy a console are already a member of one of the 3 ecosystems. And their digital library is there. This is the first generation where the big games that they're playing were games that were available last gen. When you think about Fortnite and Roblox and Minecraft, like the continuity from generation to generation is so strong. I see a lot of pundits out there that kind of want to go back to the time where we all had cartridges and discs and every new generation was a clean slate and you could switch the whole console share. That's just not the world that we are in today. There is no world where Starfield's an 11 out of 10 and people start selling their PS5s. It's not going to happen.
During this interview on the Xbox podcast, it was pretty obvious to me that Phil was over the whole console wars and had no desire to continue throwing money at hardware losses. Because you have to remember, every console that Sony and Microsoft make is sold at a loss. They make it up with software sales. Nintendo is the only one of the 3 to make an actual profit from their console itself. This is the way it's been since the console wars were a thing, essentially. So after 2 failed generations, you can kinda see why it's in their best interest to not throw hundreds of millions of dollars into the development of first-party games. Nothing has changed this generation, and I think they are recognizing that it would take a miracle to catch up to Sony or Nintendo at this point. I think deep pockets in this industry only go so far when there's other investors to answer to. And I don't think that Microsoft wants to deal with another public situation like they had with the FTC with all these acquisitions they had. So to avoid this, they can just profit from the games and not worry about their own failing hardware. It wouldn't be good for them or the industry as a whole anyway to just try and buy everything. I think they're going to try and take the Tencent approach one day and just own a little bit of everything. If you don't know who Tencent is yet, they basically own most of gaming right now, and that's no exaggeration. They own Riot, portions of Epic Games, and the list is kind of endless, so I'll spare you. But I think Microsoft sees this and they know it's far less risk in the end. Stadia is a perfect example of money can't fix everything, so don't be foolish in thinking that any company is too big to fail. Google could have poured billions of dollars into Stadia and made it work, but they saw the writing on the wall and decided that they didn't want to fight a battle like Microsoft has been for 30 years now. The Xbox brand is only a tiny percentage of what Microsoft is overall, like really tiny. If the Xbox brand died tomorrow, it wouldn't harm Microsoft in any way in the end. And in the end, money is king. With that said, if Game Pass doesn't succeed soon, that could be the end of Xbox as we know it. Not to say that the brand won't exist at all, but it just won't exist in its current form, and who knows what'll happen. Anyway, I just wanted to give my 2 cents on all this. I've been thinking about it for a long time actually. I was considering an Xbox video like this months ago, but it's starting to seem more and more likely that a big change is coming for Microsoft. And I'm rooting for Xbox. They were a huge part of my childhood. I would hate to see them leave, but time will tell. Thanks for watching.